the line about I've never been a multitasker, that's something that I find a lot with young adults who I work with who feel like they have to do a lot of different things or be good at a lot of different things. When if they focus on being great at one thing, they might be so much more fulfilled.
Hey everybody, I'm Zeplyn Tillman.
And I'm Aaron Landrum.
Welcome to the Soul and Success Podcast, a show for millennials featuring top leaders, influencers, and musicians bringing you the best recipe for having a healthy soul and how this leads to success. On today's show, we discuss success and productivity with Dr. Marlena McKnight. Dr. McKnight, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So we started this podcast because we realized mainstream conversations about success, conversations about the soul, separate from religion, and overall just like the bettering of our lives, weren't really happening in a manner that really kind of speaks to our realities. And so like one of the things that we like to do and one of the ways that we want to open each podcast is with some sort of quote or theme from a book, movie, TV show, etc. And, from that will kind of allow you to introduce yourself, why you're super important even in this space. And then we'll kind of go from there. So the first segment is called Mood. Just because in order for anything great to happen in life, the mood's got to be set, right? So I'm going to go, read this quote after you can introduce yourself a bit, tell us how you feel about it, and then we'll allow that to segue into the greater conversation. So I finished this amazing book, a super amazing book called Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. If you all have not read it, I would definitely recommend it. And it details the first 20 years of the founding of Nike, the ups and downs of his journey. He says, while going into about his third year, I was putting in 6 days a week at Price Waterhouse, spending early mornings and late nights and all weekends and vacations at Blue Ribbon. No friends, no exercise, no social life, and wholly content. My life was out of balance, sure, but I didn't care. In fact, I wanted even more imbalance, or a different type of imbalance. I wanted to dedicate every moment of every day to Blue Ribbon. I'd never been a multitasker, and I didn't see any reason to start now. I wanted to be present always. I wanted to focus constantly on the one task that really mattered. If my life was going to be all work and no play, I wanted my work to be play. So just so you have a bit of context, Blue Ribbon was the name of Nike before it became Nike, and Phil Knight was 29.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I think this is a great intro into the conversation, Dr. McKnight. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and give us thoughts on this quote? Phil Knight, founder of Nike, he's now worth about $28 billion. Nike's worth over $100 billion. Yeah. But literally, he was robotic. Is this necessary to achieve high levels of success?
That's a great quote. And maybe I'll start by just sharing my mood about the quote itself. I do think that there are seasons where, yes, you have to be all in. Huh. And the line about I've never been a multitasker, that's something that I find a lot with young adults who I work with who feel like they have to do a lot of different things or be good at a lot of different things. When if they focus on being great at one thing, they might be so much more fulfilled. But sometimes it's hard to choose, right. And people say, well, don't put all your eggs in one basket,
Absolutely.
Right? And that's true, but at the same time, what I hear in this quote is put your eggs in the basket and commit to it. Wow. And that's true in relationships. You got to do that in relationships too. Again, whether it's romantic, whether it's friendships, you got to kind of be all in, or else it doesn't work out.
Yeah, no, that's true.
So being kind of a jack of all trades, master of none, is often the demise of folks because they get really busy, and busy is the new black, right? Yeah. Everyone wants to be busy. I'm busier than you. You're busier than me. We get together and talk about how busy we are.
Right.
And so then everyone's busy.
Yep.
But are we being productive? That's what I think you guys are really kind of trying to hit on. Are we being productive? Are
Absolutely.
we being our best? And that doesn't mean that you can't kind of master other things at later points in your life. But I do think there are seasons where it makes a lot of sense to really commit, put all your eggs in one basket, and kind of be about it.
Wow.
Definitely want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself so people know who you are. I'm really excited to have you on the show because you've been a mentor of mine for I think about 6 years now, and I wouldn't have gotten through college the way I did if I didn't have someone like you shepherding me through and giving me guidance and advice about whether it was like relationships and friendships on campus, decisions I was making about student groups, even like professional, decisions about how I wanted to frame the work that I was doing and what that meant for me after college. So I want to give you an opportunity to, introduce yourself and the work that you've done and the work that you currently do with students and young people.
Sure. So I call myself an educator. I have degrees in teaching, and I've taught in elementary schools. I've taught in middle school, but my career has really evolved into working with young adults, college-age students. I love working with brilliant people who have lots of choices. My dissertation was a study of college students.
Wow.
Through that process, I learned a lot about the brain of college students, where they are in their kind of development over life.
Right.
I learned a lot about their experiences. So I'm a qualitative researcher. I followed 5 students over 4 years and documented their experience making decisions, navigating life in college, which is not simple and easy. And through that process, I learned a lot and continue to consult and work with college students and young adults. I can do a lot of things, but this is the group I like working with the most. Yeah. And I find a lot of need for it, especially, our communities, Black communities, spend a lot of time investing in young people. And as they become young adults, some of that investment kind of fizzles.
Wow.
And so I find a space for myself to be an encourager, be a cheerleader, be a coach, be a mentor. When I look at you two, I have a son, and I'm nowhere near being the age of your mothers, but I look at you two both and I think, wow, if I'm going to get my son to be a functioning young man, wow, what an investment your parents have had to make, and I don't know them. Right. So there's such an investment that we put into our children. And as young adults, there's just not as much of a net. I find myself wanting to be in that space.
Yeah. So with this show specifically being about productivity, before we kind of go any deeper, would you mind just defining what this term means for you? And then as the next part of it, how you think mastery of this can kind of help one's soul and ultimately fuel success. So the first part of that is, what is productivity in general, right? Like, what does that actually mean so that we're all kind of facing the same direction?
Yeah. I think being very clear about maybe not always your end goal, but what's your next step, and working toward that on a very consistent, intense, and focused basis.
Wow.
The intensity is important,
yeah,
because I think productivity, you have to have a little bit of hustle with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can be active but not be very intense, and so I don't know if that's productive. So I think there's a lot of elements that have to kind of come into play.
Okay.
So having a certain level of intensity, having some sort of goal for the next step, and that doesn't mean knowing what you want to be when you grow up, or where you want to live or who you want to be with, or knowing all of these steps 3 or 4, 5 years out.
Absolutely.
But where do you want to be in 6 months?
Okay.
Yeah.
So being productive every day towards that goal.
Yeah.
Being intentional, and intense about those next steps.
Really quickly though,
Sure.
just because I know that when you talk about goals, a lot of times people don't necessarily know like what that means specifically for them and how to almost even set them. So when you talk about goals, like there's no right or wrong answer, right? Like, so how should people be kind of approaching, not necessarily what to set, but like even how to think about, what do my goals look like?
In a lot of ways, I would say you got to be quiet. You got to sit down.
That's tough.
And be quiet and think and listen to yourself. Listen to the spirit, right? You got to cut out the noise. Knowing how to be still and listen to yourself is a skill.
Yeah.
And it takes practice, just like any sport or any activity. And goal setting is just that. It's about being able to be focused enough to hear yourself, your spirit, to know what you're good at, to know where you're drawn to and being able to articulate that. I do think writing things down is a strategy that really works.
Yeah.
All of us are sitting here with our cell phones, but I think physically writing things down with the pen and paper, there's no replacement for it. So being able to put some language and having the physicality of writing out what kind of person do I want to be in the next 6 months? Where do I want to grow toward? Is it I want to lose 10 pounds? Do I want to learn an instrument? Do I want to read 6 books? Whatever the goals are, they need to be measurable, they need to be specific, they need to be realistic. So that you can actually attain them. If you've got goals that are, especially short-term goals that are too lofty, you're going to get discouraged when there's no chance of you actually
how do you know that,
meeting that goal. Again, you have to be realistic with yourself.
Okay.
And some trial and error.
Right.
So that's okay too.
Yeah.
Right? But if I say I'm going to lose 25 pounds in a week, come on now.
Right.
And then even if you do, it's like, is it sustainable? Did you do it in a healthy way? And it's funny, when you were talking about like short-term goals, I think about Seinfeld has this story where he shares, in order to get better at writing jokes, you know, he would try to write a joke every day and make an X on the calendar for if you wrote a joke that day.
Absolutely.
And he would create a string of X's on the calendar. And it's like, if I can just continue to make that string longer and longer, I'm getting closer and closer to my goal of being a better comic.
And that's something that's small, right?
Yeah.
Right, one joke.
Yeah.
But you string that together and it makes a big difference. So I do think that setting goals is really important. And then connecting back to this example of productivity, if my goal is to be a better comic and I'm measuring that by one joke a day, I know I've been productive that day. Even if I don't do anything but get out, you know, if I barely get out of bed.
Absolutely.
I've been productive toward my goal that day.
Absolutely.
So being productive doesn't mean being busy, because you could be really busy and not be making any strides toward a goal. And I find, again, with some of the students that I work with, they're in this space of this productive procrastination, right? So they're doing things that are good, right? That we would all agree are good. They're visiting their professors, but they don't really have a focus, a goal, right? They're just in there talking.
Absolutely.
So that's fine, it's good, but they're not focused. They're, I worked out today. Okay, well, right, but you also didn't study. Well, I went food shopping because I'm trying to be healthy. All right, that's great. But you didn't do what we talked about you doing. So they're doing all of these things that are important and good, right? They're not, wasting time, quote unquote, but they're not being productive toward their goal. And I think for young adults in particular, if you find that you're really busy, you're probably not being as productive as you could be.
How do you feel like we got duped? I know going to Penn, it's like part of the culture. Like we were, talking earlier about, like you have the Oppression Olympics. It's like the busy Olympics. It's like if someone says, oh, I put in 60 hours a week at my job. It's like, well, shoot, like I did 40. Does that mean I didn't work hard? And that's not necessarily the case. So like, is that, why we think busyness is productive?
It's this false reality.
Yeah.
There also is a lot of comparison in young adulthood. We don't have a blueprint. It's natural to just compare yourself to what everybody else is doing. And so if someone else seems really busy, then, okay, so I'm measuring myself against what their reality is. And comparison happens all throughout your life, but I think there's something about kind of learning who you are as an adult, kind of adulting all the time, that kind of lends itself to this fairly consistent comparison, really as just a way of trying to figure out, am I doing it right? Because there's not a lot of knowing if you are.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's part of where it's coming from. But also, if you're really busy, you don't have to be quiet. You don't have to be still. You don't have to be kind of alone with your thoughts. And it's a lot easier to really avoid the deep thinking that you need to do that can sometimes be really uncomfortable.
Wow. Yeah. I remember one evening, Aaron and I were talking about this concept of how not being productive in your work life, kind of like that realization, can really kind of start to take a toll on you and almost bleed into your personal life as well, and, you know, start to mess with your confidence and self-esteem. And, you know, I know this idea of success almost and getting things done to my happiness at times. And when I'm sticking and moving and I'm, you know, feeling productive, I feel good. But when I'm not, it starts to get me down. It's almost like I'm going through like this breakup, almost like it's like become like this depressing thing, and it gets rough, you know. So how would you recommend or even look at, you know, approaching staying balanced and grounded throughout the entire process and not allowing your productivity levels to shift, you know, your energy?
There's probably a lot of different ways to approach that. One thing that I'm connecting to what you're saying is really being able to judge kind of where your energy is and where you draw energy from, and being able to kind of sort out who and what am I letting influence my energy.
That's it.
So seeing your workspace as an energy source isn't necessarily problematic, but as for young adults, most of you are not doing the jobs that you want to do.
Yeah.
You're doing the jobs that are hopefully going to get you some experience, going to pay the rent,
Absolutely.
Make some connections, help you get through school, whatever the
feel like
reasons
we have
are.
to do it.
You have to, and that's part of the game, right? All of us have been in that space.
Absolutely.
Even if you're in the industry that you want to be in, you're most likely not doing the thing that you want to do.
Right.
And so that can really suck a lot of your energy out if you allow it. So really connecting your work to another goal. There's also nothing wrong with seeing your 9 to 5 or whatever the hours of your job are as a job. I'm just providing a service in this space. It doesn't say much about who I am at my core. Put some distance between your job that, you know, they pay you for and who you are. They're not the same thing. You are not the job. The job isn't you. To separate yourself a little bit from it so that your energy, your mood is coming from some other places, from other relationships, other goals. You can spend time building up your own self-esteem. That's a whole nother conversation. But to try not to attach your emotions too much. And it's hard because you have a bad day at work, and that can kind of throw you off. But when you know it's not you, right? The job isn't you. I think you can provide some distance.
That's huge. And I think a lot of workplaces, they get more out of you if you feel like your job is your everything. And so something in my own...
they ain't loyal, so be clear about that.
And in my own personal life, I've had to learn that lesson the hard way, and have really been going through a season of transition and change as a result of, you know, my job isn't me, but I have people that I work for that would tell me that, you know, it is my end all be all. And I've had to like divest from that thought and really recognize that there's other things in my life that, you know, do give me energy. So I appreciate you sharing that a lot.
Well, it's beneficial for employers to make all of us feel connected in that way. And they want to build community and all of that, but they also want you to be all in for them, on their agenda, for their goals. And so part of the work is knowing that you are bigger than the job you're doing. That doesn't mean that you should be cocky or not get the coffee if you're supposed to be getting the coffee. But that's not you. You're bigger than that. You will grow into who you are meant to be, but having some distance is a good thing. And when things don't go as planned, you lose a job or your boss gets fired and they cut everybody, or whatever happens, or the budget gets cut, also recognizing that that's not you. It's not anything to do with you. And you go to the next job, you figure something else out.
So this next segment that we have is called What's Really Good? And I'll say in my most Cardi B voice right now, what's really good, you know? So, you know, we're going to get a bit more into the topic and just try to get some answers of why we do what we do, what's really good with some of our actions. And, you know, hopefully if it's not an addiction, you know, we can stop. And if it is, then we'll take the next appropriate steps to hopefully don't include getting checked into some sort of facility.
I'm not that kind of doctor.
No, but when you talk about productivity, right? I feel like there are two words that you can't ignore in this conversation. The first is distractions, and the second is procrastination. So let's start with distraction and talk about how we can keep on track, because I know as someone in my 20s, it's not hard for me to get distracted at all. I've probably been diagnosed with being addicted to the gram. I watch people's tweets and likes like I get paid to do it. I was in a situation with the girl where the slightest thing she would do would just completely throw my day off, and I couldn't focus anymore. I just wanted to take like naps and stuff. So like clearly the most anti-productive Dr. McKnight. Like, do you have a cure for me? Like, what is?
Yeah, man, if I did, I'd be so rich. But I'll try to give you some suggestions. And you should know, and Aaron and I have kind of been through this in our work, is I don't have a magic wand, right? Mm-hmm. But what I can offer is, again, maybe a mirror, so you can kind of see yourself a little bit more clearly, see your goals a little bit more clearly, so that you can make some small changes. Yeah. So one thing that comes to mind is a financial strategy. And in one of my distractions when I was in my early 20s was kind of trying to learn more about financial literacy. And I felt like that was kind of a gap in my own personal growth and development. I was kind of invested in this idea of wanting to buy a house at 24. So I was reading a lot of books about finances, and I did buy a house, and so that was a great experience. But one of the things that I learned in that kind of reading in that period of time is the concept of paying yourself first, right? So from the financial standpoint, and I'm not a financial advisor, so don't take my advice from a financial standpoint, but pay yourself first. So when you're trying to save, you've got bills, you've got things you want to purchase, things, maybe you want to buy a house, maybe you want to buy a new wardrobe, maybe you've got a shoe thing, but this concept of saving first. So I pay myself first. I get my paycheck and I know I'm going to put 10% over here in this pot, and then I do everything else. Okay. I think that principle goes well in terms of kind of starting off your day in a way that you're less likely to get distracted. We all get distracted, so having the goal of never being distracted is not a reasonable goal. Okay. Right, but being less distracted or starting your day and kind of having this morning before lunch is a no distraction zone, right? Okay. And I'm a morning person, so that works for me, where I'm really kind of focusing on what do I want to accomplish today. So paying yourself first. So for me, I don't respond to emails in the morning.
Oh, wow.
I initiate the emails that I want to send and get those out. I initiate the calls that I want to make and get those out. And then once I've done that, then I'll respond to you. Okay. Because that's your agenda.
Gotcha.
It's not my agenda. So I try to pay myself first with what do I need to accomplish.
Yeah. And it's not being selfish.
I need to accomplish these things.
I got you.
Yeah.
And especially with email and text, there's this unspoken rule about how long should it take for folks to respond. Well, for me, if I respond in 24 hours, then that's reasonable. Oof. Now, on your job, there may be some other things involved. But really think, does this email require an immediate response? Or can I go ahead and initiate the project for my job, right? The project that I need to kind of work on today. Can I spend 20 minutes writing the email that I need to write today so that's done, and I can focus on doing the other tasks that other people need me to do? So trying to find some structure. It's hard otherwise to kind of be really willy-nilly with it. And so knowing what the things are that distract you. So maybe it is the phone, maybe it's a person. Yeah. So you got to kind of put them with some boundaries and have some areas where they're just not in that, they're just not in the space. It also has to do with communication. So when you're in relationships, communicating and saying, I need this space and I need you to help me in this particular way, whether it's with parents or roommates or housemates or friends or significant others, telling them what your goals are and how you need them to participate in that can be really helpful. We often expect people to kind of read our minds.
Just know.
And they want to be helpful. Readers, and then we're like, well, you're not, we're getting mad at them because they're distracting us. Right. But we've never given them any direction for how we want them to participate. And most of you all have great friends and family that want you to be successful, but they are actually distracting you because you haven't told them, communicated with them on how to be helpful and supportive. So that might be one thing, is kind of figure out what the distraction is. try to set some boundaries for it. And when there are people involved, try to communicate and over communicate in some ways so that they can participate in that goal. One part of goal setting that I think is really important is you got to tell people your goal. You can't be shy about it.
Wow.
So if you make a goal and you're not willing to kind of share it, check your goal a little bit.
Wow.
Now, I'm not saying everybody needs to be in your business,
Yeah.
but are there a few people that you're willing to share that with?
Okay.
Certainly for accountability, but also just to hear yourself say it out loud.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Are you willing to share that goal?
Yeah.
A trusted person, a friend, what have you, a parent. If you're not willing to tell that goal to anybody, either you need some new people, and that might be the case, or there's something about that goal that's not fitting.
Right.
And for folks that are super successful, and when I watch television and some things, I mostly kind of music artists, I hear this story of, them walking up on a executive and they say, all right, sing, right? They want kind of to know on the spot, are you willing to just show your talent? And that same concept with the goal. If you're not willing to just kind of put it out there and say, I'm trying to work on this app, or I'm trying to lose 20 pounds, there may be something going on with your goal that you need to reevaluate.
Why do you feel like we don't want to share? Part of it feels like, I don't want to be the braggadocious, egoic, type person. Another thing may be like, I don't feel like I'm at the point yet where, to your example, I'm ready to sing to the executive. Like, I don't feel like I can master or take full advantage of this opportunity. And so I don't, I'm still building up to that point. Where's that balance of when you can feel like, all right, I can just go ahead and let the world know versus, it's just not time yet?
I mean, we all often are operating in somewhat out of fear.
Yeah.
And that's normal, and we have to kind of work toward getting out of that. But I truly believe that if you're not able or willing to share your goal with someone, and I'd even venture to say more than one person.
Okay.
So even, not just your best friend, but a little bit more publicly than that, then are you really willing to do what it takes to be as great as you will need to be to meet that goal?
I got you.
Hearing yourself make a commitment out loud, it is scary. So if I say to you, I want to be a CEO by the time I'm 30. Okay, so now I've heard myself say it.
Yeah.
So now I know that you're looking at me like, okay, that's what you're going to do. Go do it.
Go do it, yeah.
And there are people that are not going to be cheering for you. But putting it out there, you mentioned a rapper just now.
Oh, yeah.
I've been hearing so much about it, and I even know the song too. So, but and knowing the lyrics to her song, I imagine she's been very vocal about what her goals are.
Yeah.
So putting it out there. I'm not a kind of rap music enthusiast, but when I want to work out and go hard, that's what I listen to because there's a spirit in the music that makes you greater. So for you all out there, think about who you're going to share your goals with today and who you're willing to do that with. If you don't have a goal to share, start by getting quiet, figuring out what those goals are so that you can put it out there, begin to articulate it, begin to kind of put it out into the universe and into the space.
So 5 people, all right?
There you go.
5 people. You got to share your
people,
goal with
that's
5.
good.
Okay, all right.
I think you touched on being vulnerable. You didn't say the word, but that's what it really comes down to. If you're not willing to be vulnerable with yourself to get to your goals, but then also to share those goals with other people. And also being quiet enough to know if you are operating out of fear. Because operating out of fear, while it's a reality, it's not necessarily the best reality to get to where you want to be. Just like, hey, if I'm not willing to share this goal, maybe I am living in fear. And is that going to actually allow me to be someone like Cardi B where she's going and getting what she wants? And with that, the next segment is called It's a Vibe. So you mentioned music and getting in the zone and, getting your mind right. And that's something that Zeplyn and I connected was about music and soul music and thinking about how that helps us to stay level in a world that often feels a little bit insane. So with that, what I've been listening to keep myself level this week is Isley Brothers' Love Song. Classic, definitely something that has, helped me to get through some tough situations. And what about you, Zep?
So I'm a huge fan of this young kid. His name is Daniel Caesar.
Yes.
He's out of Toronto right now. It's this beautiful blend of soul and gospel and his perspective on love. And it's, I think one of the key words I'm taking out is vulnerability. He's super vulnerable and honest, and it just sounds, really good. So he's 21, 22, but shout out to him for.
Yeah.
Dr. McKnight, what about you?
The honest truth is, I mentioned I have a son, so I listen to a lot of his music, kids' music, which is acquired taste. But I'm also really aware of what I listen to because he's listening to it too. And so I'm thinking about, so every song I hear on the radio or the CDs that I put in, most of the time I'm listening to music in my car because I don't walk around with my phone that much anymore. I just can't with my lifestyle. But it's music that I want him to hear. So we've been listening to a lot of reggae lately, and he's kind of like liking that. I think it's just heavily instrumental, and he's kind of feeling that. And I like watching him listen to it.
Do you feel like genuine, authentic music can really feed the soul of a person?
Absolutely. We can all tell musicians and artists who really are authentic, and it's often not necessarily the ones that are on the radio. And there are certainly a few that are, but when energy is transferred through music, you can really feel that. And music tells a story. It can also absolutely change moods. Very therapeutic, not necessarily just from a classical music kind of way, but can help us to attach to where we are and to have other people kind of verbalize and put language to feelings that we have can be really, really helpful.
Dr. McKnight, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
As we close, can you just give us some final nuggets of wisdom, resources you would recommend, and just things that can really kind of help us with being most productive? Movies, books, YouTube, anything. Just give us some thoughts.
No movies, no books, no YouTube. Y'all need to go outside, in nature, sit down, be quiet with a pen and some paper, and figure out what's next.
There's one last thing we like to do. Is soul is. So for you, what is soul? Just you can say soul is X.
Love.
I like that. Go find some love, some more love today.
Love yourself.
Yeah, that.
And find 5 people to share your dreams with immediately.
Yeah.
But thank you again.
Be big. Take up space. It's okay.
Through drought and famine, natural disasters, my baby has been